In this lesson and the next, I'm going to cover an old musical staple that has an endearing, poignantly sentimental quality that tugs on some people's heartstrings and has been used and abused by countless songwriters and composers over the last century or so. And like stock blues turnarounds, it's an enticingly useful musical cliche that people use all the time, not so much in the modern era, but in the classic heyday of 50s, 60s, and 70s. A lot of songs were written around this progression. And it's called the minor drop. And what it is a progression built around a minor chord, minor triad, the bass line of which then descends chromatically one note at a time, while the other chord tones stay the same. This is what classical music theoreticians call oblique voice leading. And I'm going to show you some examples and different incarnations of it, and we'll check it out. Okay, some famous examples of songs that use this progression that will really hit home for you are like the intro to Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin, Right? Michelle by the Beatles. That's in the key of F minor. Stairway is in A minor. Into the Great Wide Open by Tom Petty, E minor. Here it's an E minor chord, bass line drops, and there's so many other songs. Shining You Crazy Diamond by Pink Floyd, that's in G minor. That's an interesting chord, C7 flat 9 over E. The old jazz standard, My Funny Valentine. Let me see. This Masquerade by Leon Russell, R&B tune covered by George Benson. Stevie Wonder used the progression on a couple of songs. I Just Called to Say I Love You. He starts out in the key of D flat. Then he goes to E flat minor. That's interesting. He kind of does this minor, but then backtracks on it. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Gentle on My Mind, famously covered by Glenn Campbell. And here it is. Gentle on my mind. The Beatles used it in quite a few songs. Something, George Harrison, the bridge part where it goes. Okay, that's an example. The minor drop in A minor. Paul McCartney used it in the Beatles, Got to Get You Into My Life. That one's in the key of G, but he goes up to B minor, the 3 minor chord. Says B minor, A sharp augmented, D over A, G sharp minor 7 flat 5. From the disco era, you got You Should Be Dancing by the Bee Gees. You should be dancing, yeah. It goes, you got C minor, and then B augmented, E flat over B flat, D augmented. That's another example where the minor drop actually backtracks a little bit. Time in a Bottle, Jim Croce, singer-songwriters. That's an interesting case in point because it's in the key of D minor. Typically, when the bass line drops, you don't have the root note. In this case, D. You don't have that staying. It's typically like you would have an augmented chord a half step below, but he's going. So you have an interesting dissonance here. Right? You have a C sharp in the bass and then a D on top, but because you're arpeggiating it, that kind of makes it more acceptable to the ear and actually kind of musically effective. And then it passes. G7 over B, right? Yeah, My Way, famously covered by Frank Sinatra and Elvis Presley. And now the end is near. Na, 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 na. Right here comes on the E minor chord. E minor, and then E minor major 7, and then E minor 7 to A7, back to D. That's a really common use of the minor drop progression, is applied to the 2 chord. Say in a major progression, I'm in the key of D, and I have this E minor, A7 to D. I want to prolong the 2 chord and make it more interesting, so I'll do the minor drop, E minor major 7, E minor 7, and then that note resolves, that becomes the 3rd of the 5 chord, A7. So that's used that way in a lot of songs. You can also use it as the relative minor chord, like the 6th chord. I was talking about Something by the Beatles earlier. It's in the key of C, right? Then it goes to F. Then on a bridge, it goes down to A minor. That's a relative minor. Okay, so there's different ways you can use it. I'm going to show you some sets of open and movable chord shapes. You use a minor drop progression and some standard variations on it. And hopefully you'll be able to apply these to some songs of your own. Check this out. Okay, full bar chords in A minor, we would have A minor major 7. You could play the A on top. You're going to have a clash there, but it's up to you if you want to include that or just the bottom 5 strings. And then A minor 7, and then A minor 6. Sometimes the bass will stay on the root note, and that's called the pedal tone. So we have the pedal tone version of the progression where you have that descending thread, A minor major 7, A minor 7, A minor 6, with the bass staying on A. And then just as often, instead of going to a minor 6 chord, it'll resolve up a 4th to a dominant 7th chord. So a lot of times, or D7. The Stairway to Heaven intro is a perfect example of that. A minor major 9. Jimmy Page throws in the 9th there. It's kind of clever. C over G, and then D over F sharp, as opposed to staying. What if he instead went did a minor 6? That would completely change the character of the song. Probably not for the better. I like the way he did it originally. Okay, here's the version in A minor with the bass dropping, okay? So what happens is you have A minor, and then the bass follows the minor drop. So then we have no more element of, there's nothing A minor about it at this point, okay? So we went from A minor to G sharp augmented. And then will be a second inversion C major triad, or C over G. And then F sharp minor 7 flat 5, one of my favorite chords. Or that could be a D7 over F sharp. Here's a set of open chords, okay, in A minor. A minor major 7, A minor 7, A minor 6. That's pretty, right? You have the open strings adding some shimmer here. Or you can go to D7. Or you can play D7 over F sharp, like the blues guys with the thumb. And especially if you did that with the bass drop. There's your G sharp augmented chord. I'm doing a double stop. It's called shared fingertip fretting. Tip of my index finger is pressing down on both strings. You got to have kind of like fat sausage fingers to do that. And then C over G. You could either go to F sharp minor 7 flat 5, which you could think of as A minor over F sharp, or you can go to D9. And D7 or D9. Here's another set, a useful set of minor drop chords in the key of D minor. We have open forms here. D minor major 7, D minor 7, D minor 6, or you could go to G7 instead. So you can go, so D minor major 7, D minor 7, G7, or just G. Elvis Costello did that in Veronica. It's a very, I love the sound of that. It's very poignant, you know, it really kind of, it tugs on my heartstrings. I don't know about you, but, but it's a cliche, you know, so it is what it is. Here's D minor bar chords. D minor major 7. You could play D minor 7 like that, and then D minor 6. Or you could use the open D string. Or you could go to G, G9. That's a neat sound, kind of sophisticated. D minor major 7, D minor 7, G9. Played a low bass note here. And here's in the key of D minor with open chords using the bass drop. This is kind of like Time in a Bottle. D minor over C sharp. You have the dissonance there, right? And then D minor over C, B minor 7 flat 5, or G7 over B. Also, you know, the tune C'est la vie by Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Another thing the minor drop progression typically does, once you have that, it typically goes to the flat 6. And then it does something like to the 5 chord, the 1 chord. How you resolve it is up to you. This is a tool. It's meant to be used and experimented with, right? And finally here in the key of E minor, lots of open strings here. We got E minor over D sharp. And if you just look at that in isolation, that's D sharp augmented. You could add, if you want to keep your pedal tone, E minor over D or E minor 7, and then you can go to, oh, that's pretty, C sharp minor 7 flat 5, which is basically E minor over C sharp, or E minor 6 over, yeah, E minor 6 over C sharp. Well, you could also go to A7 there. So you got E minor over D sharp, E minor over D, go to A7, that's very satisfying. And then you can resolve that to D. So that would be, you're doing the minor drop applied to your 2 chord in the key of D. Here's one, finally, this is like a, kind of like what Tom Petty did in The Great Wide Open. I'm adding the 9th here. Petty's was more straightforward. E minor, D sharp augmented, G over D, C sharp minor 7 flat 5. But if you add this F sharp here, it's E minor add 2 or add 9. And then, so we're adding this color tone. Now that becomes, what is that? That's D sharp augmented, add sharp 2, I guess you would call that. And then, wow, G major 7 over D, and then C sharp minor 7 flat 5. And from there, you would probably go, or you can go B7, resolve it to a straight E minor. Lots of things you can do with this. Okay, that's the minor drop progression. Try transposing these chords to different keys. You know, you have the shapes that don't have any open strings are movable and thus transposable to different tonal centers. And you know, experiment with it. Next time, I'm going to show you some interesting melodic stuff, some kind of shreddy, arpeggiated ways to outline the minor drop progression.